Okay, guys, I am so excited. We are live. We're on YouTube. So there's a chat box right beside all of your questions I'll be answering throughout this live stream. So now is the time to get started. So, hello, everybody. My name is Jessie Lane Lee, and I am a holistic nutritionist and cookbook author and live cooking class instructor. And today I am super duper excited to be here live on YouTube showing you how to make my candy cane black bean brownies. I am obsessed with this recipe. It is so yummy, and the best part is that it's actually healthy. Woo! I love it when things are healthy and delicious because you guys know I'm all about my desserts. I love my sweets, but we got to make them healthy as well. So the first thing you want to do if you haven't already is preheat your oven to 350. So mine's already going, so I'll just start cooking. If yours is a little bit slower to get ready, totally fine, because I'm going to chat with you for a while at the end anyways. So the next thing you want to do is you want to melt your coconut oil. In the summer, not an issue, but in the winter, if your coconut oil is, oh my gosh, hard to open, anything like mine, it's solid. And we need it to be melted for this recipe. So what I like to do is I have this pot sitting here on the element of my stove that like emits the extra heat. So I like to just use that because then I'm not using any extra electricity to heat the coconut oil. So we need 3 tablespoons. I'm an eyeballer and this recipe is pretty forgiving. So I'm just gonna, just eyeball 3 tablespoons using a big serving spoon. These are pretty big scoops, so maybe just a tiny bit more. Perfect. So that's our coconut oil. So we're just going to let the coconut oil hang out over here, heat up, and melt, and we will start making the rest of this delicious recipe. So the next thing you want to do for this recipe is to make your oat flour. So you can totally buy oat flour and just put a half a cup in your food processor along with all the other ingredients. But if you don't have it on hand, oats are really great because they're a really soft grain. So something like a spelt flour or even almond flour, it's really hard to make in a food processor because it isn't strong enough to make it nice and thin and like kind of small grains. Oats are so soft, it's so easy to do. And this is all the flour we're using in this recipe. So as long as you get the gluten-free oats, then this is a gluten-free recipe. So it's really great because oftentimes we're going to parties and stuff where people have sensitivities and allergies. So with this recipe, we don't have to worry. It is nut-free, it is gluten-free, which is really awesome. Not vegan this time though. Okay, so I've just put a half a cup of oats into my food processor, and I'm just gonna blend them until it looks like a powder. So we'll just put on the top and give it a little blend. It's so fast. And I love this recipe because we're doing everything in the food processor. So barely any dishes, which is so good. I'm gonna give us a little bit more. I just love it. It makes everything so easy. Okay, so I'm gonna show you what this looks like. Now, no, I should go longer. I was gonna show you, like, there's no clumps, but there is. Okay, so I'm just gonna let that run and walk a little bit further away so you guys can hear me a little bit better. So I love oats in this recipe because they're a really good source of fiber. And the cool thing about fiber is it's gonna slow the digestion of the sugars in this recipe as they enter your bloodstream. So it's gonna make sure that when you're eating these brownies, you don't have a huge sugar spike followed by a big crash where you're tired and cranky. Okay, that should be good. Let's check on them. Oh yeah, now we've got it. So I'll show you what this looks like here. Now again, it's not as fine as like a flour you might buy in the store, but pretty good, right? Pretty good flour. So now we're gonna put this back on here, and then we're just gonna continue throwing all of the ingredients into the Cuisinart. And of course, guys, if you're here listening live, if you have any questions, all you gotta do is type them in the chat box. So I'm happy to answer them. I have it wide open on my screen, ready to answer your questions. The other thing too, if you're joining and you didn't register, then you didn't get the recipe. So if you go back afterwards, at the end of this YouTube video, I have a link where you can put your name, email address, and I'll send you the recipe. It's on page 10 of my free Healthy Holiday Dessert ebook. All right, so we've got our oats in here. What else are we gonna add? Well, the star of the recipe is the black beans. So we're gonna do that now, get those in there. So when you're looking for black beans, it's about 2 cups cooked. That works well in this recipe, so I just get the regular ones. But you could make them from scratch as well if you did that. So it doesn't have to be from a can. We love the store bought, but I know, or we love like making them from scratch, but a lot of us just don't have the time. With anything from a can, it's really important to rinse it because it gets actually pretty like gross as it's sitting in there. It's also important to think about buying black beans from a can that are a BPA-free can because BPA can wreak havoc on your body, especially your endocrine system. So if you're someone who is trying to get pregnant, you definitely want to avoid BPA. Like really stay as far away from it as possible because it's going to really mess up your fertility. So I have about 2 cups of black beans here, and I'm just going to throw them in the food processor. And so it seems weird, right? We're putting beans in a dessert. Like weird, right? But I'll tell you, you cannot taste them. You will not be able to tell there are black beans in these brownies. I promise. Better yet, your kids will not know. Or maybe they're cooking along with you now and they'll be like surprised and shocked and have fun tricking their friends into eating black beans without knowing it. So I'm going to just dump these right in here. And they take up quite a bit of that food processor. And again, we're just throwing everything in here. So the black beans in here, really good source of protein, right? Having desserts with protein is so important because they fill you up and sustain you. If you make a regular pan of brownies or from like a boxed mix or whatever, there's not a lot of protein in there. Really, it's just the eggs that you're adding. And then what happens is you have one brownie and then you're like, oh, those brownies just came out of the oven. They smell so good. I'm going to have another one and another one. And you'll end up eating like half a pan of brownies. With these brownies, because we have the black beans, which are tons of protein, again, tons of fiber like the oats, and we're adding 3 eggs, so even more protein, they're going to be pretty filling. So it's going to be hard to eat a half a pan of these brownies because they're actually going to fill you up. They're actually so healthy, like I'll probably eat these for breakfast tomorrow because we're not adding that much sugar either. So I'm going to just crack 3 eggs right into the food processor. So easy to do. And I have just like regular large size eggs, nothing too special. I like to try to get organic if I can because again, I just had where did it go? Whoa, there's a shell-like one in there. That's what happens when you talk and dump eggs into the bowl. Oh well, you know what? The shell's fine. More protein. We're gonna blend it. Nobody's gonna tell. Just don't tell anybody when I'm serving this to them. Don't tell them I had a shell fall into mine. That's the fun of cooking in your own kitchen. You can kind of do what you need to do and it doesn't matter, right? Okay, so I have 3 eggs in there. I like to buy organic eggs, as I was mentioning before, because it's just better living conditions for the animals. And on top of that, with organic, they're not given antibiotics or hormones. So that's something we really want to think about avoiding with our animal proteins because a lot of those chemicals and hormones will stay in the fat. So I really like going organic for my eggs for sure. All right, so the eggs are in. What else do we need to add here? We need to add raw cacao powder. Okay, so I went to the grocery store and I couldn't find any and I ran out. So I ended up just getting regular cocoa powder. Either way, it's going to taste great. With raw cacao, it's a little bit less bitter because it hasn't been roasted. And has more nutrient value because it hasn't been, again, cooked. That being said, there's still a lot of great things in regular cocoa powder. And then you get that roasted flavor. I really like this brand because it's fair trade. And I'm just dumping in half a cup of that cocoa powder in here. And this, along with the oats, is pretty much the only like floury, dense things that we're adding. Okay, what else do we need? We need some honey. This is our sweetener. Honey is our main sweetener for this. So I love using honey in my baking because it's a really healthy sweetener. It still has vitamins and minerals. It is high in fructose, so you do have to think about that, but has a lot more nutrients than say regular table sugar. It also has a bit of a lower glycemic index as well, so it doesn't quite affect your blood sugars as strongly. So I'm pretty sure I'm adding 3/4 of a cup. I'm just going to check here of honey. Yeah, 3/4 of a cup. So I'm just going to use my half a cup measure so I don't have to do as many dishes. I'm going to fill it up once to the brim and then once halfway through. And I'm guessing that will probably be the rest of my honey. Honey is also awesome because it has really great antibacterial, antimicrobial, anti pretty much everything properties. Oh, I only have a half cup. Well, these won't be as sweet as they would be normally, but that's fine. So I really like honey for those properties, especially around the holidays when you don't want to get sick. So if you want to put honey in your tea, or I really like doing honey with lemon water. It's so nice, like when it's heated up, because it's really good for soothing your throat and helping with any issues that are going on there if you're starting to get sick or you feel a tickle or anything like that. So my honey, it's gone. I can't believe I finished this whole bottle. It's so huge. I like this honey too. I get this one from Costco. It's organic honey. Ideally, you want to be buying raw honey that hasn't been pasteurized. I'm pretty sure this one's non-pasteurized, so that's great. That means it's not heated, and that means it's going to retain a lot more of its nutrient benefits. And ideally, you also want to be buying local honey because that way you're supporting the local commerce, and you're also making sure that the bees have pollinated the flowers in your area. So if you have any allergies to seasonal allergies, having honey that's local can actually help with those allergies because there's little tiny bits of it, like the pollen in the honey, so it's slowly helping you build immunity. That being said, I got this one at Costco and it's really cheap, so that's why I like to use it. All right, well, I'm getting tired of waiting for this to come out, so I think that's most of it. So you should have three-quarters of a cup of honey. Now I mentioned mine was a little bit less, but I think it's still going to be fine because I'm not so worried. You know, I might add a little bit of stevia just to make sure it's extra sweet because I don't want them to be too bitter. Although I guess we're adding candy canes. No, it'll be fine. All right, so we've got the honey. What else do we need? We need our coconut oil. So how cool is that? You can't really see, but this coconut oil is now fully melted. And I didn't have to use any energy, power, electricity to do that. I literally just stuck it on that vent where stuff is coming out. So you need about 3 tablespoons. You can measure that. I kind of eyeball measured it as I went before. My recipes are usually pretty forgiving because I'm not one to measure. I don't know why. I'm just kind of lazy. So now you want to make sure too is this is like super hot, like mine is. Yeah, it's pretty hot. I'm actually going to let it sit for a few moments because if I put this in super hot off the stove, it might scramble my eggs. And that is not what we're trying to go for. So I'm just going to sit mine there to let it come a little bit cooler because I don't want to scramble those eggs. So while we wait, I am going to add baking powder. This is going to help the brownies rise, although they are pretty dense brownies. So for this recipe, you need 1 teaspoon of baking powder. So I'll dump that in, kind of a staple in baking. And then we need our flavoring. So we are adding candy canes because they're candy cane black bean brownies, but I still like to add a little bit of a peppermint taste to it. So I get this organic peppermint extract and I actually lent it to a friend the other day and she said it was super strong. So I don't know if that's true because I only ever use this in my own recipes. If it is stronger than regular peppermint extract, you may want to add a little bit of extra. I'm adding a full tablespoon, so it's actually quite a bit, and it really gives it that nice peppermint flavor. Alternatively, you could use a peppermint essential oil, although those are even more like potent than this. So you'd have to kind of play around if you wanted to go that route. And then I also like to add vanilla because I find it adds that nice warm kind of baking feeling to my baking. So I'm going to put vanilla in there too. And I'm doing 1 tablespoon. Vanilla is really cool because I think this one, the bottle is someone else's bottle, but I actually make my own vanilla. If you buy vanilla beans, you can chop them up really small and scrape everything out of them and then put them in something like this and add vodka, like good quality vodka, and let it sit. And you have your own homemade vanilla extract. It's so simple. You just gotta kind of shake it up every now and then to make sure that it doesn't, or to make sure it like actually infuses. So I think that was all of our ingredients. I'm gonna double check and then we'll add our coconut oil and start blending. How exciting. Okay, so we've got our oats, we've got our beans, we've got our eggs, we've got coconut oil, we did the cacao powder, the honey, the baking powder, the vanilla extract, the peppermint extract. Perfect. So all we need is the coconut oil. And then we're gonna fold the other things in later. So is everybody with me? We're good? Okay. So I'm going to put this in. I'm going to try to put it like kind of away from the eggs, just in case. And then we just blend it. We're just going to blend until smooth. So easy. So I'm going to turn this back on and turn it. Make sure it's all covered so it doesn't explode everywhere. And we want to leave this blending for a little bit of time because we want to make sure it's smooth. If there are like really weird clumps and lumps in our brownies, especially if you're serving it to kids, they're going to be like really grossed out. So let's see what we've got. I like to go for a while. Okay, so I'm just going to do a little peek. Again, if you couldn't hear me while it was blending, I was just saying that you really, oh, someone said, don't know. Yeah, you didn't know about making my own vanilla extract. Yeah, it's so easy to do. Yeah, Patty, I highly recommend it. If it's cheaper or not, the jury's still out because I find vanilla beans are pretty expensive. But the last time I made my own vanilla extract, I was able to make 2 batches from the same beans. So pretty good. And it's kind of a fun experiment anyways. Cool. What kind of bittersweet chocolate chips do you use? Perfect. So that's a really good question. I just have some mini bittersweet chocolate chips here. You can get them from the same brand, the Camino brand that I had my cacao powder. And I like those because they're fair trade. I also like to try to find ones that are dairy free as well. I don't think those ones are. I don't remember because I finished the bag and threw the rest out. But there's Enjoy Life has nice dairy free ones as well. And sometimes I don't even use chocolate. I use carob because I'm a big carob fan. I absolutely love carob. So what I'm doing now is I'm just kind of wiping down the sides, making sure it looks good. And then I'm going to blend it some more because as I was saying when the blender was going, if there's like weird clumps and chunks in your brownies, then people might get suspicious, especially if you're serving them to kids. So I like to really make sure that it's nice and smooth. So mine is pretty good, but I am going to just give it another whirl to make sure it's nice and smooth. And there might be like teeny tiny ones, but you want to make sure there's no like big chunks of bean because that's a little off-putting in a brownie. We'll turn that back on. Wipe down my counter. I made a huge mess there. And then I'm going to show you my candy cane technique. How to crush them. It's so good. And Patty's saying that she loves carob. I know, right? It is so good. All right, so let's see what we got here. I think that's sounding pretty good. Yes, I like it. Okay. So this is what it should look like. See if you can see that there. Pretty smooth. I mean, there are like kind of teeny tiny clumps, but I think that's the oats, so I'm not too worried about that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put it into our 8x8 baking dish. So there's 2 options here to make sure it doesn't stick. You can either grease down the dish with coconut oil and then add a sprinkle of your oat flour and make sure it's fully coated before adding the batter. And that's going to make sure it doesn't stick to the sides. What I like to do, I don't know, it feels easier to me. I don't know if it actually is, but I like to use parchment paper. So I just like measure it out, throw some parchment paper on there, and then that way they just lift out so easily. So I'm just going to put that in. Actually, I might cut it a bit because it seems a little bit long. And I really like parchment paper because it is much better for you than doing something like aluminum foil. Number 1, your baking will stick to aluminum foil. And then number 2, aluminum foil has aluminum and it's not really something we want to have a lot of in our daily lives. So I like to try to avoid it as much as possible. Now, if you're new to baking, you may think wax paper is a good option because on the cover of the wax paper thing, there's cookies sitting on wax paper. Well, let me tell you a story. I did that once where I lined whatever it was with wax paper and it went up in flames in my oven. So wax paper is not for heat. Wax paper, maybe if you want to cool them later on wax paper or separate them in like a cookie tin or anything that goes in the freezer, but not anything that goes in the oven because you'll end up with a fire, which is not ideal. Okay, so I just cut a little bit off because I don't like it when it like hangs out. I don't know, it looks weird. And I always worry it's going to catch on fire, but it never has. All right, so now I have this nice and lined, and I'm going to take half of my chocolate chips and just fold them in so that they're kind of throughout. So I'm just shaking half of them into this blender. And I'm also going to add half the candy canes as well. So I have 4 candy canes here that I'm going to use. It says about a half a cup of chocolate chips, half a cup of candy canes. I like to keep some chocolate chips to sprinkle on top and some to fold in. So the candy canes I'm using are a brand that are organic, and they are sweetened with cane sugar, natural peppermint extract, and the coloring is a natural coloring. It's beet juice. So it doesn't look as bright red and festive and vibrant as regular candy canes that you would buy, but you get to skip on all of that, bad, icky ingredients. That being said, you can totally get regular candy canes if you want to. So the way I like to do it is I will put my candy cane on the countertop and then just smash it with the package on, and then I'll unwrap it all crumbled into my container. So that's what I like to do. You can get rid of some holiday frustration this way. An alternative is to put it in a blender. Probably not this one because it's full of stuff, but if you had a smaller blender, you could just zing it a couple times and it'll work well. So I'm literally just doing this. Since it's like candied, it shatters pretty easily. You don't have to use a lot of force. You could also do this with a rolling pin, a meat mallet. I think this is a rolling pin, just like a small one, whatever you've got. So once it starts to kind of crumble, you got to catch it before the wrapping comes apart, or else you have a candy cane mess. I was doing a lot of baking this morning, and the bottom of my socks are covered in candy cane pieces because I made a mess. And then you just kind of roll it. I'll move this over here so you can see it. Roll it, unroll it into your dish. Delicious. So a half a cup of candy canes can be anywhere from 4 to like 7 candy canes. It depends on how big your candy canes are and how chunky your pieces come out. I like my pieces to be pretty chunky because I like the crunch that they add. But if you want them to be a little bit less chunky, then using the food processor or something is a really good idea. So I'm just unraveling it here, and if I find like a big piece comes out, like, oh no, it's coming. Sometimes you got to get your fingers in there. As long as you have clean hands, it's totally fine. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so good. You're going to have super sticky fingers by the end of this candy cane stuff. Okay. So that's one. I'm going to do another one to put inside, and then the other ones I'll put on the top for pretty decoration. I probably should have brought over more than 4 because I think 5 to 7 is a little bit closer to how many we need, but whatever. I've got 4. These organic candy canes are actually really hard to find. I'm going to add, I think maybe I already did, or if I didn't, I'll give you a link to where you can find them on Amazon. They're only on Amazon.com, but if you're in Canada, I found them at Goodness Me, and every now and then, Loblaws and health food stores will have them, like the grocery stores, but don't get your hopes up because last year we really spent a lot of time driving around the city trying to find them. And we didn't. So this year I ordered 5 boxes from Goodness Me, and it was fantastic. And I didn't have to leave my house, which is always great. Yay, more candy canes. Thank you. All right. So since I had a delicious delivery of more candy canes, I'm going to do a third in here because I just love it. It's so yummy, these candy canes. They're so good. Although, you know what's the funny thing? I actually don't care for candy canes so much by themselves, but I love them in baking. I don't know what it is. Maybe like the little ones, but like a big candy cane like this, like I can't eat that in one sitting. I don't know why. Too sweet, maybe? Me saying too sweet, that's pretty funny. But anyways, okay, so I did 3. So I'm going to do 3 now, and then I'm going to put maybe 3 on top. We'll see what looks good. And see, this method isn't so bad. Like, I've actually been pretty clean this time, so I didn't lose any bits and pieces. I find the problem with doing a food processor, it works well, but the pieces are thinner, so you lose kind of the chunks. So it just depends on what you're looking for. And if you don't mind if there's artificial flavor and coloring in your candy canes, apparently at bulk food stores, you can buy already crushed candy canes, so you can save yourself 5 minutes or longer. Okay. So I'm just going to fold these in. So again, I don't like doing dishes or making more dishes, so I'm just going to do it right here in the food processor because why not, right? Oh, we have a really good question from Patty here. She says her daughter doesn't like candy canes, and would it be possible to make it without? 100%. This recipe, if it's not the holidays, you can make it, leave out the peppermint extract, leave out the candy canes, and maybe add more chocolate chips. Perfect recipe for all year round. You could also add walnuts. If you're not working with a nut-free kind of situation, you could do half a cup of chocolate chips, half a cup of walnuts would be a really nice black bean brownie. You could add peanuts, you could add almonds, you could add goji berries. I mean, it's just as long as you have 1 cup of something in there, totally fine. 1 cup of chocolate chips, whatever you want, just to give it that depth. Or you could still add the peppermint extract and have them as peppermint, but just without the candy canes in there. Totally. I'm trying to think if you add coffee, it's really good. If you add something like, I really like Dandy Blend, which is a herbal coffee. It's really nice. It's dandelion roots that are blended, so it gives it kind of a chocolate mocha kind of flavor. So instead of the chocolate chips, you could add half a cup of chocolate chips and a half a cup of Dandy Blend for these mocha black bean brownies. Leave out the peppermint. Oh, it's good. Or I guess you could add peppermint. Peppermint mocha is like a thing too, isn't it? Yeah, really versatile recipe. All my recipes are pretty like easygoing and not too fussy with measuring because again, I'm pretty lazy and I don't really like to measure. Awesome. Okay. So I did pretty good getting most of that out. And then what I like to do is I like to just take my spatula and smooth out this top layer. And oh my gosh, if you could smell this, or I guess smell your own, doesn't that smell so good? Oh, delicious. I love this recipe. And like really, in my version, because I ran out of honey, there's only half a cup of honey to sweeten this whole thing, plus the candy canes. But still, not too shabby. All right, so I think this is pretty even. And I got the top nice and smooth. I know there's raw eggs in here, but I'm going to do it anyways. Oh yeah, that is a good batter. So pepperminty. Okay, now I'm going to sprinkle the top with chocolate chips. So I have the mini ones. You can have the big ones. It really doesn't matter. If you are dairy-free, definitely make sure you get the dairy-free ones because that's important. So chocolate chips on top. And then I'm going to add candy canes. So this is a brand that I buy. It's the only one I've found that's organic. And the ingredients are evaporated canned juice, brown rice syrup, natural peppermint flavor, added color from fruit juice. Pretty simple. Not so bad. I mean, if you want candy canes, this is the way to go. And I can send you the link. I'll add it to the video or something so you guys have that too. So I think I might not even need that many more. I'm going to do 2 more and see how that looks on top. Because the top ones are kind of, well, they add crunch, but they're kind of there just to make it look pretty. I used to make them without them on top, and they kind of looked boring. The one in the picture doesn't have them on top. I don't like it as much. Should take another photograph for you guys. Okay. So, same thing. Crush them with a rolling pin. You know what? 1 candy cane might actually be enough to cover this. If you wanted to really be pretty about it, you would do this into like a bowl and then sprinkle it evenly. But let's be serious. That's not happening right now. All right. Oh, you know what? I think 1 candy cane is enough because it's just enough to give that little bit of color. We don't want it to be like totally topped. If you weren't using candy canes, putting like walnuts on the top and the chocolate chips on the top is a really nice way to do too. Especially if you're going somewhere where you don't know if people have nut allergies and you're using nuts, it's nice to have them in a place where people can see them. So if they have a nut allergy, they automatically know this is not for me and I got to stay away. So it's a nice way to do that. All right. Ooh, almost done. Okay. Yeah, you know what? I think 1 candy cane is great for this topping. Cool. So that's it. Those are your candy cane black bean brownies. How long did it take us? Well, it took us half an hour, but I was talking a lot. So without me talking, you can whip these up in like 10 minutes. So I'm going to put them in the oven. They're at 350. And I'm going to set my timer for 30 minutes. Now, it may take a little bit longer than 30. Sometimes they take 40. It just depends on your oven. So I like to start at 30 and then I'll just test them. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that when you insert a toothpick in the center, it comes out clean. I also kind of like smush it around while it's in there just to make sure that it's really coming out clean. So that's the recipe. Lovely candy cane black bean brownies. I'm so happy you guys tuned in. Yum, candy canes from Alex Gallia. Fantastic. So before you guys go, I'll chat a little bit. I said I'd stay around till they are cooked. So if you guys have questions, now is the time to ask them, and I'm so excited to answer them in the chat. Before I get to all the questions, I want to tell you about my cookbook. So this recipe actually isn't in this cookbook, but there's a lot of really great recipes similar to this in my cookbook, Healthy Dairy-Free Desserts. It has over 30 dessert recipes, and all of them have really nice pictures. So let's see. There's also some other stuff at the beginning, lots of information on health, substitutes, stuff like that. Delicious cookies, raw blueberry cheesecake. Oh my gosh, that's one of my favorites. I love the raw ones. Chocolate avocado pudding. It tastes like the bad for you pudding, but it's so good for you, and it's mostly avocados. Raw black forest brownies. OMG, these are so good. What else do I mean, I love all the recipes. There's a chocolate bar recipe, so if you want to make your own chocolate chips, this is what you do. Follow this recipe and then cut them up really small, and you'll have homemade chocolate chunks. I guess not really chips, because that would be really finicky to make them in the chocolate chip size. This one is my carob hazelnut bark, so I'm making a version of this actually tomorrow. If you guys are in Toronto, if you tune into breakfast television on City TV at 8:20, I'll be making this carob bark, but with candy canes. I will be talking and making another round of these brownies. So the ones I have on display will be these ones. So you guys will be like, ooh, I saw her make those. And I will also be doing candy cane hot chocolate and candy cane spell cookies and candy cane blondies. So it's a candy cane extravaganza tomorrow on breakfast television at 8:20. Yeah, so there's a lot of really great recipes. There's one in here by Sarah Bester, Real Food Gingerbread Men. This one is perfect for the holidays, and it's so good. I've probably made it like 1,000 times. So if you're interested, you can find this cookbook online. If you go to my website, jessielanewellness.com/dairy-free-desserts, you have a link. You can buy it online, digital version for $8, or you can go to Amazon and it's $16 US, so about 21 Canadian, depending on where our dollar is at the time, because it's a US company that prints them. So make sure you check this out if you haven't already, because I think you guys, if you like this recipe, you're really going to like all the recipes in here. And all of these recipes are dairy-free, so you don't have to worry about anybody with lactose intolerant or dairy sensitivities. I also have 26 of them are gluten-free, so pretty much all of them are gluten-free. 17 of them are vegan, and then another 17 is paleo, so lots of different options, stuff for everyone. And there's actually 12 recipes that have no sugar. So they're either sweetened with something like stevia or fruit, so really cool. Definitely want to check that out. So I'm going to see if there's any questions now, so keep them coming. Would there be a substitute for the oats if one can't have oats? That is a fantastic question, Patty, because I know oat allergies are something that I'm seeing more and more of. So instead of oats, you could use any gluten-free flour. That would work pretty well here. So I shouldn't say any. Brown rice flour would be really great. Coconut flour, I wouldn't do. Almond flour would work well though. So I'd say, yeah, probably your brown rice or almond flour would be a really good substitute. If gluten isn't an issue for you, then spelt flour would work as well, but you would need less. I would say with spelt flour, you probably would do 1/3 of a cup because it's going to absorb some of that liquid. I haven't tried it with either of those substitutes, but I'm 99% sure that they're going to work. So if you have an oat allergy, I know with oats it's kind of a weird thing because they're kind of gluten-free, but some people believe they're not, and then other people have celiac and they're fine with oats, and then there's other people who have celiac who really react strongly to oats. So kind of one of those like weird gray area gluten-free things for sure. But yeah, almond flour or what's the other one I said? Brown rice flour would work really well in this recipe. Yeah, it's pretty forgiving. Because if you think about it, for the most part, it's just black beans and eggs. The eggs are really giving it the volume and like the stick togetherness, and the black beans are again giving it volume. So it's pretty easy recipe to play around with for sure. That's what I love it. I love it so much. And it's so yummy. Like we hardly added any sugar, and we're gonna like be indulging on these brownies, but like not really indulging. So if you guys have any more questions, feel free to put them in the chat. If you didn't already, last week I had another webinar that was healthy eating over the holidays. So the replay for that is up on the YouTube channel already. So if you guys After this, I think it actually automatically links to it. So that one's a half an hour. I just give you some tips for healthy eating over the holidays so you have a healthy holiday season. Because over the holidays, often a lot of us, we decide, oh, it's the holidays, I'm just going to eat whatever. And then we get bloated and we get tummy upset and we get acne and all these terrible things that start to happen. So during that webinar, it's about a half an hour, 40 minutes. I just give you some really great tips so you can stay healthy over the holidays, but still enjoy and indulge. Things like this is really great. If you're going to a party, bring these black bean brownies because everybody will thank you. It's healthy and it still tastes awesome. And then you're still able to indulge and eat desserts without going for the more higher sugar, higher calorie, lower goodness desserts. So that's what I strongly recommend checking that out. And I have a lot of other stuff on my YouTube channel too. If you guys subscribe, I'm pretty sure whenever I do these live videos, you'll get a notification. And it's my goal for 2017 to do lots of these live videos because they're so fun and because my husband spent the whole day yesterday figuring out how to do them. So thank you, Chris. I tried and I was like, oh my God, technology, I can't do it. I have a very low tolerance for technology and technological things. I don't like it. So he's very nice to take care of that. I have another question. Have you tried it with a sweetener substitute instead of honey? Yes. So these work really well with maple syrup. Honey and maple syrup are such a good thing to substitute 1-for-1. So same amount, you'd use 2 or 3/4 of a cup of maple syrup. It'll work really well. In fact, when I ran out of honey, I was going to grab maple syrup, but my fridge is a bit of a mess because I'm doing the food demo tomorrow. So there's just like food all over that fridge. So I didn't want to open it in front of you guys. But yeah, honey would work really well. Coconut nectar would work well. Brown rice syrup would work well. If you wanted to add a solid sugar, like a coconut sugar, you'd have to play around with the recipe a bit. Maybe if you, I don't know, added a little bit more liquid, you could add some almond milk to kind of counterbalance that. You'd have to start getting really creative, but yeah, that would work. I also know that these, when I've tried them, they don't do vegan very well. You kind of really need those eggs to kind of keep it all together. When you try it without the eggs, it just doesn't stick. This recipe. There's other recipes out there that are vegan black bean brownies, but this one I tried playing with it, just like substituting the 3 eggs for 3 chia eggs, and it didn't work. And if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say chia eggs, I have a whole video for that too that teaches you how to make a chia egg. It's so easy. And for most recipes it works, but never have I had very much success when I'm doing gluten-free plus chia egg because you need something to bind. And we have another question about the stevia. So what if we use stevia as a substitute? So you totally could, but my recommendation with stevia is I find, so stevia is bittersweet and chocolate is bittersweet. So when you take 2 bittersweet things and put them together, it's still very bitter. But carob is sweet, 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 caramelly, chocolatey deliciousness. So carob and stevia, put them together, match made in heaven. So if you're going to use something like stevia, then you definitely want to be using carob powder instead of the raw cacao. Otherwise, some people like it, but I find for myself it's just too much bitterness when you have the raw cacao and the stevia. That being said, you would only really need 1/4 teaspoon of stevia to sweeten this whole recipe because 1 teaspoon of stevia is equivalent to a full cup of sweetness and sugar. So you would barely need any stevia. So you're losing a liquid. So maybe you'd have to add some almond milk or something to kind of counterbalance that. I actually have a recipe based on this recipe actually for breakfast brownies. And it's going to be in my breakfast cookbook, which is coming out God knows when. I don't know. It's coming at some point. So whenever that cookbook comes out, the breakfast brownie recipe has stevia sweetened carob brownies. So I figured out the ratio for that, but I do not remember it because I haven't looked at that recipe in a while because I don't know when that cookbook's coming out yet. So that was a really good question. I'm a big fan of stevia. And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, stevia is a leaf similar to mint. And the kind you want to get is they just take the leaf, they dehydrate it, and they pound it into a powder. That's it. So it's bright green. Well, not bright, but it's green. And it smells like grassy and sweet. And I love, love, love using it in my baking. But doesn't mix with everything. And since it's 1 teaspoon of sweetness to 1 cup of sugar, it gets really tricky because you can't do a 1-for-1, like not even close, right? You definitely want to go for the green stevia though, because when you're looking at the white powdered stevia, it used to be green, so they have to bleach it and do a lot of processing to get it to the white phase. You also have to be careful if you see a stevia that can be substituted 1-for-1 with sugar. Because if 1 teaspoon, which is this much, is equivalent to a full cup of sugar and sweetness, and you're substituting 1-for-1, that's a ton of fillers to make that possible. So please be aware and really try to buy the green stuff. And it is pretty widely available. They have it at Goodness Me online now because I kept on doing webinars with them and I talk about it and I'm like, but you guys don't have it. And then a lot of people ask for it, so they have it now. So if you're in Canada, that's a good place to get it, for sure. All right, so I've got about 18 minutes left on my brownies, but if there's no more questions, I'll sign off because all you got to do is just after half an hour, when your timer goes off, stick a Q-tip. That would be gross. Stick a toothpick in the center, make sure it comes out clean, and then let them cool before enjoying them. That's done. So delicious. And again, this recipe was on page 10 of my holiday, what was it called? Healthy Holiday Desserts ebook. So if you're just tuning in from YouTube and you didn't get that ebook and you want the recipe, then you can go to jessielanewellness.com/freebies and you can pick it up there. And it has 8 holiday recipes that are all delicious and healthy. So not just this one, 7 others. It's a really fun ebook and I'm very excited about it. So I don't see any more questions. So thank you guys so much for watching and hanging out and baking with me today. I hope your kitchens are starting to smell delicious because my kitchen sure is. Make sure you subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss any more videos. And please give it a like and share it with friends because this video goes live the instant-ish that this live feed finishes. So as soon as it's live, share it with your friends, share it with your family. Tell everybody that it's possible to make brownies that are healthy for the holidays. Thank you guys so much. Bye.